Okay, in this video I'm going to show you what I want you to do on these percentage charts. Now, as I show you this, it's going to seem a bit redundant and that you're doing the same thing over and over, but I want you to get a full understanding of what percentages actually mean. So first off, it says a survey of 200 randomly selected commuters show that 64 of them prefer taking a train. Let's stop there for just a second and let's say, okay, we've got 200 total people. So out here in this first line, I'm going to put that 200 people. That represents every person, okay? But only 64 of them prefer to take a train. Now, before we go any further, since 100% is the 200, a couple of different ways we can think of this. I could divide that by 10. Notice I've got 10%, 20%. I could divide that number by 10, and I get the number 20. What does that mean? That means that 10% would be 20, 20% would be 40, 30% would be 60, 80, so on and so forth. Half of them would be 100, and we know that. That makes sense. Half of 200 is 100. So dividing it by 10 shows you that each of those bars count as 20 people. But we're wondering where 64 would land. So if each bar counts as 20 people, that'd be 20, 40, 60. It's going to be somewhere right in there. And I'm going to go ahead and put a mark. My 64 out of 200 is going to be somewhere right there. There's a better way of working it, though. There's a way that we can figure out exactly where it lands on this chart. And that method is actually turning this into a percentage. Now, a couple of different ways you can do it. You could actually divide that. 64 divided by 200. I'll go ahead and write it out. 64 divided by 200 gives you a 0.32 as a decimal. That's going to be exactly 32%, okay, which is about where we put that mark. Now, let's go a step further with the problem. There's another way we could work it. How do we know about where it falls? Well, 200, half of that we said was going to be 100. Half of that we said was going to be, or is going to be somewhere around 25%, which would be 50. Well, we know it's bigger than that. So a couple of different ways we can think of it. However, the second part of the problem says this: predict how many out of the 1,500. So my second bar, I want to be 1,500 people. Okay, if 32% is what we said, 32% of that 1,500, well, let's do the same thing. Each box is 10%. If we divide the 1,500 by 10, we get 150 people. So out of the 1,500, this bar would be 150 people. This bar would be 300 people. This bar would be 450 people. This bar would be 600 people. So it's going to be somewhere between 450 and 600, but I want to know, again, an exact answer. I know that if 32% of the 1,500 is more than likely going to, prefer as well, we can figure that out. Remember how we did that before? 32% of the 1,500, all means to multiply. We're going to turn that back into decimal form, and we're simply going to do 0.32 times 1,500, and that gives me exactly 480 people. And that's what we said. We said each of these bars is going to count about 150. So 150, 300, 450. So right there in that same place would be exactly 480. So here's what I want you to do. I know that 64 out of 200 preferred. I know out of the 1,500 that 480 out of the 1,500 would prefer it. So I want you to do this mark right here. Okay, this percentage up to this point, which represents 0.32 or 32%, I want you to write it three ways. 64 out of 200, which is the same thing as 480 out of 1,500, which is the same thing as 32 out of 100. Why? Because we wrote it as a decimal, as percent. All of these things mean the exact same thing. So this 64 out of 200 is the same thing. And I'm going to come over here, and for my final bar, I'm going to put 100. Because I know that it's also equal to 3,200 out of 100 because it's 32%. Let's try one more. So if in a random sample of 80 dental patients, so there's 80 total, so I'm going to put that on my first line. 12 of them required a root canal. Well, where's 12 going to fall? 10%, we can divide that 80 by 10, and 10% is going to be 8. This is going to be 16, so it's going to be somewhere between 8 and 16. Let's do it the best way. And my answer, which is going to be somewhere right in here, and we can go ahead and let's do it up here. Let's do 12 out of 80. That's how I'm going to find my answer. And when I divide that, I get 0.15, or 15% of them, which is exactly right in the middle of that. So out of the 80 dental patients, the 12 out of 80 falls exactly right there. And that 12 out of 80 is going to be, let's go ahead and read the rest of the problem. Predict how many out of 2,400. So there's 2,400, and this is the same ratios that we've done in times past. So 12 out of 80 is going to be the same thing as how many out of 2,400. Well, we know 15% of them are more than likely going to require this. So 15% of, which means multiply, 2,400 will also more than likely require this dental procedure. When I multiply the 0.15 times 2,400, I get 360. So out of the 2,400 patients, 360 out of the 2,400 is the exact same percentage. So 12 out of 80, which is the same thing as 360 out of 2,400, which is the exact same thing as 15 out of 100. They're all equal to 0.15 if you want to go ahead and put that as well. They're all equal to 15%. Every one of them line up on the exact same spot. They have the same ratio as each other.